Right, good evening and welcome to News Sources. And it has been a week that has seen two major political parties unveil their manifestos. Tonight on News Sources, we ask whose pledges reign supreme and who has the winning manifesto and which side puts you, the voter, right at the heart of their plans. News Sources starts now, but before we start, let me introduce my guest. Tonight joined by Ramadan Rajab, who is a journalist. Right next to him, by my side here, is Dr. Nelly Bosire, who is a trade unionist and, of course, a doctor. Also joined by Danish Odongo, who is a political commentator, and tonight Sarah Bakata, who's a journalist at The Nation Media Group. Before we start, let's have a look at the highlights.
Our record for 4.5 years speaks for itself.
This country has suffered for far too long under bad governance. The time is now.
Hii maneno ya NASA kusema watapatia vijana kazi ni urongo mkubwa kabisa.
NASA manifesto launch yesterday night was one of the best launch I've seen in this country because it was based on facts.
Sisi haja yetu ni haki ifanyike hapa Kirinyaga, ndio? Na haki ni yenu. Sawa sawa? Kwa sababu atogolia sio ndani yako.
Right, so this week has seen the two major political parties unveil their manifestos to the electorate in a quest to woo more voters. Experts have said that the Jubilee Party manifesto is more technocratic, while the NASA one is value-based. But what they failed to tell Kenyans is how will they finance all these grand plans?
Corruption is a cancer in our society. Corruption is choking development in our country. It is not because of lack of laws. It is not because of lack of institutions, but it is because of lack of the will to be able to enforce the laws and create a proper system in our country.
We will move job creation in our country from 800,000 every year to 1.3 million jobs. We have a superior plan, a superior agenda, program for our country that our competitors can only copy.
Right, so I think I'll start with my take on this, which is that the NASA manifesto does seem to be a manifesto that's talking to the people, trying to engage their value systems and their culture, while the Jubilee manifesto seems like it's project-based, trying to do things for the people rather than engage with them. I'll start with you, Sarah. What do you think?
Actually, to be fair, what I thought was the Jubilee manifesto, because Jubilee has been in power for the past 4.5 years, right. So they needed to play up what they have already accomplished. So as much as it was reflecting backwards to what they have done, they were also trying to say, from what we have done, we'll take it from there and move it forward. That's the sense I got. Although the biggest problem I had with the manifesto, it was full of numbers and full of all these grand ideas that even from the previous manifesto, they didn't actually accomplish, and now they're promising even more, and they're not saying the how.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot about projects and infrastructure and things that they're going to actually do. But good question is where are they going to get the money from, either side?
I agree with her that the Jubilee Manifesto was full of ideas and full of grand projects. Then the NASA Manifesto too kind of looked like it's more of a value-based system that they're trying to bring a new Kenya. However, I think maybe what Jubilee is trying to do is to ensure that they build our they build our optimism up so that we're able to believe in our country. Maybe we have gone through seasons of doubt and maybe we don't believe in our country, but maybe this is the time for us to actually believe that 1.3 million jobs is possible within a year. Hopefully, the thing that now we need to know is, how has Jubilee fared for the last 4.5 years? And if they promise us these grand things that are promising, can they able to change the lives of ordinary Kenyans? That really is what I'm really concerned about.
Right, and figures have gone up, 1.3 million jobs. You said, I think 1.2 million acres under irrigation, which is up from 1 million the last time around. Dr. Nelly, is there any way that we can, they can achieve what they have promised, both Jubilee and NASA's fresh promises?
On the end of how to finance these grand manifestos, I think I'm very skeptical because what we have had is we've had Jubilee in power for the last 4.5 years that came in with a very grand manifesto, a manifesto that has put us into so much debt. It has really, really cost us economically. Our economy is not doing well, whichever way we want to describe it. Even the layman can understand that right now they can't afford basics. And so it then makes us very skeptical because what that person is going to translate it into is that if you intend to take this to the next level, it means then you're going to put me more in debt, you're going to make it even more difficult for me to afford ABC, taxation is going up and all that. And that really doesn't then look like it's something you want to sell. And just as you're saying, it's very technocratic. It's talking to people who are at the level of implementing, and they're implementing without my opinion being sought, or in a sense that my involvement is part of it. But when I look at the NASA one also, it is really, really heavily investing on the people to want to have a change of heart. We are a society that's been riddled with a lot of corruption, abuse of office, and all these things. And if the same people are expected to implement that manifesto, then they really must come clearly out and demonstrate just how they're going to inculcate these values into people for them to try and take the country to the level where they are foreseeing.
That's true. And one of the things that NASA is saying about Jubilee is that it's put us in perennial borrowing mode, that we're on a borrowing treadmill. And now we're faced with a situation where they all have such grand plans and they need the money. So is NASA proposing to borrow more money? Or Rajab, how do you see NASA implementing, for example, the free secondary education?
But one thing they spoke about is bring down taxes. Meaning, if you bring down taxes, you bring more people into the tax bracket. If taxes are high, we have more people evading paying taxes. Secondly, if the country is at peace with itself, investors will creep in, will come. At the moment, what we are facing is every election year, we have tensions. So investors who come here for short time. So meaning they will not come and invest. So that way, if they have this value-based system they are talking about, is to bring a country, to make a country a cohesive one. A cohesive country will attract investments. With that, you can be able to finance these projects. But looking at the other side, Jubilee, I think they have a daunting task to really convince Kenyans that really they can deliver even a 1.3 job, 3 million jobs, because the last years, they promised 800 jobs. They never delivered. We saw companies sacking. We saw
million jobs.
Yes, we saw companies closing down. But when you see these leaders on the stage, I think they think Kenyans are daft. They can't really evaluate from where they're coming from.
But Kenyans might be daft, Rajab, because the same people on the other side, the opposition, they've been in government. They've had a chance to do all these fancy things as well.
But that's argument. You see, we are dealing with a president. Those guys you are saying, they have never been a president of this country.
But they have been part and parcel of the machinery of government.
Being in government does not mean you hold absolute power. You don't even make decisions. If you're president, let's compare Uhuru Kenyatta to Kibaki, to Moi.
But how about if you're Prime Minister, Sarah?
Let me answer her. Rajab, even in fact, if we are to actually talk about the Prime Minister's position and the the Vice President position that Kalonzo held in the Nusumkati regime, the SGR is calculated to them. If you look at the Lapset project, if you look at the kilometers of roads, the Huduma centers, they are actually were birthed in the Jubilee, in the regime. I'm saying in the regime that Raila and Kalonzo were in.
But that's
so this argument that these people have been in government and they've not done anything, that's a defeatist argument.
They did not implement. They might have had brilliant ideas.
How
but
then
the
do you finance? How do you finance if there's no idea in the first place?
You can't compare.
This is what I'm asking. I asked where is the money coming from.
No, so that argument they were in government and I think we need to move on from that government. We need to move on from that argument and ask
You can't
Jubilee.
do those comparisons.
Absolutely.
Because we've had Jubilee in power. What Jubilee should be telling us, we've delivered 800,000 jobs. We've delivered, like, for instance, the Deputy President was speaking about stadiums. He was just lying. When you go to those counties he was mentioning, either if there's a project, it's a county project. But he was mentioning it as if it's a national government project, which is a big lie.
My problem was, when I said initially, the numbers that are being bandied around. He talked of every graduate getting an internship, getting paid between 15 and 20,000 shillings per month for between 1 year and 1.5 years. That's the Jubilee, the Deputy President said that. And I was thinking to myself, somebody did the calculations, 18 billion annually. Dr. Nelly is here, the Ministry of Health. They don't have money. NASA's right now on strike. There's no unga. We don't know where we are getting our next maize from. And these guys are talking of putting more land under irrigation, and the ones that they were supposed to have
Even
put under
Galana,
irrigation
where they
has
put
not
money.
happened.
What has happened to it?
All right, let's keep this manifesto conversation going, because now both manifestos have promised to offer free secondary education, differing only on when the free education commences. NASA principals say that free secondary education will begin once elected into office, while President Uhuru Kenyatta says that under his government, it will begin in January. Now, free secondary education will cost the government at least 60 billion shillings. But just how practical is all of this?
Sema tukishika namna hii kuanzia Septemba watoto watasoma bure katika shule zote za sekondari, sio Januari, Septemba mwaka huu. Tamu ya mwisho watoto watalipa karo katika sekondari zetu.
Honorable Raila Odinga, let me inform you that when you make policy, it requires planning. Tunaelewana? Ukija kunena kitu, usinene ati ndio upigiwe makofi. Sisi wakati tulinena, tulijua ni kwa nini tunasema Januari, kwa sababu tunajua where the gaps are that we must meet in order for us to be able to offer our fellow Kenyans free secondary education.
Right, so Jubilee there, of course, has the benefit of being the incumbent. The Jubilee Party, the president, his deputy, they probably know what they're talking about when it comes to how much it's going to cost. Do you have any hopes that NASA, having not been in government making decisions at any point in their careers, can they fund this free secondary education by September?
I think that's possible. What the president said is neither here nor there. If we go back to 2003, when Kibaki was first appointed, what did he declare? Free primary education, and it was immediately. It started. He was not in government before that. But just because you're not in government, it doesn't mean you don't know how much the government makes, or where government gets its money from, or where you're going to take money from, which side of government, where government is making money and put it elsewhere. They know. So I don't think Honorable Raila stood there to say something that he has no clue about.
But
I don't want to believe
he has
that.
a point that the financial year begins in June, I believe, and ends in June. If they come into office in August, is there any conceivable way they can fund anything in September?
But also supplementary budgets are done. But again,
to the tune of 60 billion.
Look at what Jubilee is promising. This is not the first time they promised free secondary education. They have been promising every year that they will do it, which anyway, they have all promised. What we should be discussing about is the quality. Because you can promise give it free, but we have people taking their children to private schools. Why? Because the system has collapsed. So the discussion now going forward should be how do we make sure that even Raila's son or daughter or grandchild or Huru's grandchild goes to this secondary schools. And that should be the debate now, because all of them are promised.
I want to agree with both two views, that it's possible to be done in September, but also we need planning, because in terms of teachers, in terms of infrastructure, we probably need to lay them down. But to keep the ball rolling, we can actually start this thing in September. It is possible. So both views are probably just, people are judging them from the lens of, where they're standing in terms of their political affiliation. But if you look at them keenly, you can actually agree that it can start in September.
Actually, I'm just judging them based on the money, because the 60 billion is only for tuition. You have to pay teachers, you have to need infrastructure, you need uniform, you need books, which might bring this thing to about 1 billion Kenya shillings a year, Dr. Nelly. I'm just wondering, like we asked before, you've been quiet.
I've just been listening because whichever side wants to vow what, I'm speaking from the health experience of waking up one morning and saying free maternity education. I mean, free maternity care. And to date...
Education would be good as well.
And to date, that is a project that is crawling along on its knees, and nobody wants to accept that it is actually not really happening. The
government has said that
I know,
doubled the number of women.
That's even the more painful bit, that they can actually stand on national TV and say it's a success, judging from what parameters? You don't say that because we had 60% more women deliver in the health sector, in the hospital, that is free maternity health. What's happening is you go to a county hospital, you are told, yes, it's free, you're not paying any bills, but we don't have gloves, we don't have medication, we don't have syringes, we don't have what. Go and buy fast, and then we deliver you. That is not free. And if we're going to talk about free education and take it down the same lane, frankly, I don't care who's promising it. To me, it will be another disappointment. But all in all, we need to realize that every president has a pet project. Kibaki had 2 pet projects. He had the Thika Road and he had the free primary education. He was able to execute them. Fantastic, and today we have something to hold. We still know that the free primary education has hiccups, but the reality is that those hiccups are as a result of corruption, which if weeded out, that problem can go away and the program can be successful. Now, going where we're going with free secondary education, if this is going to be NASA's, their pet project, and they're determined to make it happen, even if they say it starts tomorrow, they will make it happen. We know they understand government. They've been there before. They know how to make it work. But for me, the bigger deal is what he's saying. What's the quality of the free education? Are we really doing our children justice, or are we playing them for a penny? It's not right if we're going to offer what's not useful.
Right, Sarah?
I mean, I totally agree with her. And as she says, whoever wins come August 8th, and they take, if it's Jubilee, they said January, they'll implement it. If NASA wins and they say September, they'll implement it. So long as you're in government, you're holding all instruments of power, you have everything at your disposal, they'll find a way to find the money, and they will fund it, and they will roll it out. But the quality?
Well, fingers crossed that they find that money. But now the issues of historical injustices was evident in both manifestos, where as the Jubilee government claimed that among its achievements was the closure of a painful chapter in Kenya's history through the president's apology and the resettlement of IDPs. Has this chapter really been closed? Now we're talking about historical injustices that date back, obviously, to circa 1963. So resettling of IDPs, I think they were talking about after the post-election violence, 2007 and 2008. And my main question is this, I think I'll start with you, Nelly, is an apology from the president for everything that has ever gone wrong in terms of historical injustices to an entire people, is an apology enough, or must more be done?
I think the apology was probably, and it ends up looking like it's in very bad taste. Because if this was meant to be sorted out, you don't wait until the end of the 4.5-year term to start sorting this out. He came into power from a government where he was actually the Minister for Finance, and these IDPs have been around. They were there for 5 whole years during that term in that government, and you take it up and you know that this problem is still festering and you do nothing about it until the last few weeks, and then you start throwing money around. It's in very bad taste. And I think that probably, even if it were to happen, should have been done silently and not in the full glare of the press. But when we talk about historical injustices, from the Jubilee perspective, I get the feeling like for them it begins and ends with IDPs of the 2008 post-election violence, and that's it. Like, that's how far back they look. But when we look at the NASA aspect, they're looking all the way back to literally the colonial times. Yeah. And these whole issues and that's why they keep talking about all these reports that have never been implemented, because they were handling the injustices of land. And as long as those have not been sorted out, we will always have problems. But right now, 50% of the Kenyan population is below the age of 24. A lot of them have zero appreciation for the things that, for instance, Honorable Raila Odinga will try to address. So they are going to vote. And we have 4.3 million newly registered voters who are in that age bracket. They're going to vote, and trying to campaign on that platform might mean nothing to them.
But just because they have no institutional memory of the historical injustices doesn't mean they're not being affected.
In terms they are being affected, but you see, if you're asking them to vote for you so you can reverse something they don't understand, then it becomes a problem. Yeah, you understand? Yes. But in terms of saying that you want to make this right for them, maybe for them what is more appealing at this point is economic empowerment, because they're thinking about, I'm here now, I'm going this way. This I don't understand, and every time I try to look back, to them it just looks tribal, and and nobody's taking time to put it in the context of how it affects them today. I haven't seen anybody doing that. A lot of the youngsters who are evicted, even as recent as the 2008 post-election violence, remember, it's 9 years. If they were 9, they're adults. They're away from home, they're in college, or they're already hustling and getting their little jobs here and there, and they absolutely moved on. They gave up that anything will ever be done.
But I think land will forever be a contentious issue, even if you look just as far back as 2007, because there are some people who are IDPs or settlers or squatters on land which they actually own. So even the younger generation have had issues with these kind of injustices. I do understand your point completely, but does this mean that manifestos are just vote-generating machines? Is that what we're saying, that if you cannot convince the electorate to vote for you on the basis of your manifesto, then it's useless?
Oh, yeah. I think so, yeah.
Isn't it supposed to be like a plan, a 5-year plan?
It is supposed to be like a plan, but right now it's being used for political optics. So the more emotional, the more, what do you say, working up a crowd kind of thing. That's what these manifestos are all about, honestly. But if you looked at both of them.
I don't agree with you, because I've been battling with that problem where Kenyans, even those who've gone to school, who happen to look a bit knowledgeable, they were saying, this manifesto launch was too boring. They wanted poem. They are not really interacting with the contents. For instance, this issue of historical injustices. As long as we are unable to address it, we will never have economic progress. Historical injustices also addresses things to do with the extrajudicial killings, which the youths are facing. Go to Mathare, go to Korokocho. Police are killing youngsters every day. Those are injustices people are speaking about. It's not about land alone. So, in fact, even the Nyayo House victims, those are part of historical injustices. And as long as we are unable to address it, Kenya will never have peace. So, but if you look at the manifesto from the Jubilee side, they are finished. The business is closed. So for them, they say they're not looking at the side mirror. They're on the windscreen.
Isn't there any value, though, in moving forward and trying to make the future better than the past? Because these historical injustices, how exactly do you solve them?
The past informs the present.
Yes, and the future. But you get to a point where you keep on harping on the past and you're not progressing.
Look at the issues of land. If you have people still making a lot of noise or painting inside, saying someone snatched my land or someone chased me from my land, that person will never have peace of mind. But if you, for instance, we have a master plan called the Truth Justice Commission report, which the Jubilee administration has really frustrated. They have not implemented it. That was to give us a recourse on moving forward. And NASA team has said, when we come to power, we will look at that report and make sure it's implemented.
Here's my problem with that.
That's the way forward.
Maybe, Danish, is that like we've agreed that a manifesto is just for gathering votes, yes? So the promises then don't really... If you're saying... No, we haven't agreed. I asked, is it merely a vote-generating machine? And we're like, yeah, more or less, yes?
No, we didn't agree.
Anyway, but do we really think that when NASA comes into government then, based on these promises, that they're going to solve these issues?
I think the idea that we will be willing to open up the historical injustice wounds and try to address them is a step in the right direction. Because some of these things have been swept under the carpet for generations and generations, and this country is held hostage by pains of the past. I agree with Rajab. There's no way you can claim that we want to move to a future that is bright and clear unless we deal with the darkness of the past. And this country, with our short 50-year history, we have seen some of the most horrendous things. We're talking about the Wagala massacre. We're talking about the 1969 massacre in Kisumu. We're talking about the people who were killed in October. We're talking about JM Karaoke. Yes. We're talking about Hola. We're talking about as recently in Kasarani detention camps, where a community was identified and put there in detention camps. Some of these things are the reason why the politics in this country are so polarized. Unless we're able to deflate the tensions that this country has been accumulating since 2007 when it broke up, we will not go anywhere. And I agree with Rajab. For the economic benefit of this country, for us to come together and be united and move forward as a people, we must deal with the demons of the past.
And I'm hopeful because Honorable Raila says, he wants to have a transition government. Transition government sorts out these problems. And they have even a commitment. They're saying we are going to sign down an agreement that we must implement these things.
What does a transitional government mean from a party which has not been in government?
No, a transition government, they're coming in. So for him, he wants to do one term to really make sure we sort out our problems and move ahead. And that's me. It gives me hope as a Kenyan.
Right, fair comment, and let's just stay on here with matters manifestos. And one of the biggest problems ailing the Jubilee government is corruption. The Uhuru government has for the past 4 years been unable to prosecute anyone implicated in the NYS, Eurobond and Afia House scandals while blaming the police and court systems. NASA flag bearer Raila Odinga promised to fight corruption in his government, but let's have a listen in and see what he had to say.
An agreement that he will not do business with the government. Today, we have a situation where those who are in government are themselves businessmen. And this itself is generating corruption.
Right. So, of course, Jubilee has been in power, like we know, for the past 4 years, and they've listed as some of the achievements, creating a multi-agency team to fight corruption, recovering or being in the process of recovering 3 billion Kenya shillings, empowering the DPP, etc., to prosecute corruption cases, prosecuting hate speech. These sound good on paper, like they could be successes, but is this the real deal on the ground, Nelly? Not Nelly, sorry, Sarah.
When it comes to, let me comment on corruption first. Even the way our politics right now is set, politicians are being funded by business people.
Absolutely.
And these business people are not doing it for the goodness of their hearts. It's not a charitable organization. Government is what it is. It's government. They're just seeing a huge fund of, it's like a huge bank to most business people. So what do? Support the political parties. Then the political party takes power, it becomes the government. The business people move in and they start doing business with government. And there's nobody in government who's going to deny them that right. Because first of all, we spent your money, dude, we put you there. So payback time. What is it? It's almost like what the South Africans are calling the state capture.
Yeah.
And this is exactly where we are today.
Yeah.
So when you say we're going to deal with corruption, I don't know how we are going to deal with it when right now you're fighting for power and you're being funded from
by private
in the
special
shadows.
interests.
By
Yes.
special interests,
Yeah.
yes.
So if NASA says that they're not going to do business with government, is that possible?
First of all, the issue of corruption is something that neither side should actually talk about. Because if you look at the Tokyo scandal, if you look at the issue of the Golden Bag, if you look at the who are surrounding Raila Odinga, a number of them have been implicated in major corruption scandals that were never resolved. Even the maize scandal during his time as a prime minister. If you look at this aside, we look at the NYS, we look at the Eurobond scandal, we're looking at tear gassing of children in a Langata, in a primary school right now in Nairobi. And these people are actually talking and saying they will champion the change and, removing of the gangrene of cancer up. Pretty much daydreaming. And the best thing that Kenyans should do is to wake them up from that reality. My prayer is that even though we have created a multi-level agency to fight corruption, we shall not be talking about corruption. It will not be a talk show. It will be something that is happening. We are recovering money. We are firing people. We are stopping them from advancing. Or as recent as 1.2 billion security bridge, why haven't we seen anybody apprehended? Why haven't we seen anybody owning up? How then do we want to fight corruption in the next 5 years while small things like those we are being overwhelmed to do? Absolutely hogwash.
Well, I think the Bible says, "He who has no sin cast the first stone," something like that. Do the NASA 5, let me call them, have any leg to stand on when it comes to saying that they're going to fight corruption, given that Wetangula, I know, has been shrouded in some kind of controversy around land in Turkana, around the embassy building. Yes, there was the maize scandal, of course, when Raila was prime minister. I mean, there are several other things that have gone on around them, which people could call rightfully corruption. Nelly, should they be pointing fingers and saying how they're going to fight this thing, or are they capable of doing it?
I think where it has reached, really, anybody who has been in whichever government for the last 50 years, it is very difficult for them to stand aside and say that they have been transacting fairly and that they do not have any corruption scandals up their sleeve. We are only talking about the ones that we know. I'm sure there are a lot of other things that happen quietly which we're not aware of. And for that reason, then, if you're going to come out to fight corruption boldly, like really, really boldly, then you have to be ready to say that this could take me down with it too. And until we have that one leader who is willing to really take that sacrifice, any talk we're making about corruption is a waste of taxpayers' money, is a waste of all of our time. All these institutions we keep putting up are a waste of our money because they don't have any mandate to do anything, as it has been clearly demonstrated, what we're talking about. You cannot invest in a CID department. You have an anti-corruption unit. These places are manned. And yet money continues to flow through like it's water through a sieve, and we still want to even have this discussion about corruption. Anybody who intends to change corruption in this country will never talk about it.
Yeah.
They'll get into power and they will do it. And they will face hostility. Their lives will be threatened. But that is the only way they can achieve it. So as far as the discussion on corruption goes, I really do not listen. I don't think it is useful. It's a waste of all of our times. And it brings to light what you kept asking, that are these manifestos a vote wooing or what? How will Jubilee manifesto help anybody?
Right.
Looking at the history, that the last five, yes, the last one.
You mentioned we need like a leader's leader to come and like lead us out of the situation where we find ourselves in, somebody who's selfless, willing to go down. Rajab, do you see anybody like that on the landscape?
I think I refuse to throw up my arms and say we defeated. We saw in 2002, when the new NAC government was coming to power, the zeal, the people, you know, the government at the time had, the political goodwill was there, and Kenyans really fought corruption at the moment. What made me a bit hopeful with this party manifesto for NASA team is because one, they said,
are you a NASA supporter?
No government.
Are you a NASA supporter?
Said, no. I'm looking at it and really
stop putting people
we
on
can't
the
have a fair balance in this issue because Jubilee has been in power, yet it's been unable to deal with it completely. We've seen government officials, top government officials, doing business with government. So how do you go and prosecute a business associated with the deputy president?
Could it be a case of sour grapes?
So for these guys, they have said, they will, in fact, there's an agreement that drafting to say we will never do business with government. Meaning, if they do, you can take them to court.
You know the history of MOUs in this country?
No. It's not an MOU. This is a legal instrument that you can take to court as an individual, as a Kenyan, and sue. This one way is 1 foot in the right step.
Well, this is my argument about all this. Like I was saying before, these manifestos, can we hold them to account when they're elected and tell them they must do what they said they will do? And our Twitter poll question is about that, in fact, tonight. Because we're asking you, do you think party manifestos are legally binding documents? Do you think party manifestos are legally binding documents? You can reach me at Julie Masiga, at KTN News. Of course, the hashtag is News Sources. Do share your views with us. We will sample them as we go along. Right now, we're going for a quick break. Don't go too far away.